Emily Hughes is a former Olympian who serves on the boards of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum, as well as the U.S. Figure Skating Foundation. Emily, welcome to Get A Lodha This.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk plenty about your own athletic career, and I definitely want to get to that. But first, I just want to talk about you as a sports fan. Do you have any memories of what sports you watched growing up?
Oh, we always had sports on TV growing up. My dad was just a sports fan. I think anytime people came over, there was some sports on TV, whether it was tennis, golf, hockey, figure skating. And so growing up, I grew up in a house that really watched a lot of sports and played a lot of sports. So sports was a big part of my childhood.
Yeah, you come from a family of athletes, some of whom are very accomplished, including your dad and your sister. How did that home environment impact how you came to view training and competition?
That's a good question. Yeah, so my dad played hockey growing up, played through college, and then played recreationally all his life. And so for him, that was such a just a part of. It was like almost like a family hobby in a way that all of them played hockey or figure skate, and so that he brought that to our family, and so all of us were on the ice to some degree, and so it was something we kind of did in the beginning a little bit as a family, and then my brothers really took off with hockey, and me and my sisters took off with figure skating, and it's having siblings who do the same sport and being the younger sibling. I always did look up to my older siblings. And so I watched my sister Sarah train, and she's 4 years older than I am. So I really saw the day in and day out of what she did. And she ended up winning the Olympics in 2002. And so I really got a first row seat to what that looked like. And that was really inspiring for me.
You mentioned having a front row seat to your sister's training experience. What was it like to watch her in 2002 when she was there in that moment competing for a medal?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have a front row seat there. We definitely we were all there. The whole family was there, and we were sitting way, 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 way at the top. But it was a pretty magical experience. I think, about 13 years old, and the way that the scoring system worked, it really came down to the last skater and the scores from the last skater to see who was going to win the event. And so I remember this photo where. We're all just still waiting for that last skater's scores. And another photo taken 30 seconds later, and it's a blur because we're all jumping and yelling and screaming because we just learned that she won the Olympics. And for me, that was at a point in my skating where I actually that year competed at nationals at the junior level and got last place. And for me, that was like a time in my skating where it was kind of a pivotal moment of, oh, I just watched my sister win the Olympics. I want to do that. I can do that. And it really, really changed a little bit of my career trajectory.
Before we get to the trajectory, I do want to talk about that moment I've watched so many times on TV. You've finished your program, you've maybe like high-fived or hugged someone, and then you go sit on that bench.
The kiss and cry, yes.
Yeah, you're like, you have to kind of, you're on camera. So you sort of have to smile, I feel like, no matter what comes up on the board. But like everyone's watching it come up at the same time as you. What are your emotions in that moment? Just like sitting there, looking at the screen, waiting for the announcement.
That's a funny one. They call it the kiss and cry, and you are sitting there, and it's kind of an in between moment of. You just put everything out on the ice and you just gave it your all. And then there's this couple minutes where you just have to wait, which is, I think, the hardest part is just waiting while to see what the scores are. And there's nothing more you could do. And so it is a kind of a funny couple minutes, and the crowd is obviously watching you. People at home are watching you. But it's this kind of in between of you can't really control anything after that point. So it's a little bit of accepting of, all right, let's see what these scores are.
So you started skating in the early 90s. At what point did you start to think, wow, I'm really good, but also maybe I'm not good certain weeks or certain months because I did this in the competition and now I'm trying to bounce back from that? Like, what was that experience like of feeling like you're really good, but then also going through those challenges?
Yeah, so I started skating young. I started skating around 3, which is pretty young. I'm from a big family. I'm the fifth of 6 kids, and my parents took my older siblings to the rink, and so I tagged along. My mom likes to tell a story that she used to bring my older sister to the rink, and she brought me as well. And then she said I used to run around, and she just put me on the ice so that she could watch me at the same time as my sister, and that's kind of how I started skating. And then yeah, through my career, I loved the sport and loved competing, and so just kept, it was kind of one step after another. And I think it was always, growing up, I was always a dream of being an Olympian, but I don't think that dream really turned into potential reality until still young, probably, 12, 13, 14 years old. But like you said, it wasn't always on top of the podium. When I was the first year or a year when I qualified to the national championships as a junior, which is the level below senior, I had mentioned that I got last place. And that was the same year my sister won the Olympics. And so that was also a time of, if I really wanted to potentially try to make that goal of being an Olympian, I kind of had to change my mindset towards what it meant to be a skater, and my mindset towards training. And that, as a 13-year-old, I was young, but it was really that shift of taking ownership of my skating career that kind of put me back on a path to, not a straight path, because the next year I didn't even qualify to the national championships, but put me on this path where I then started to take my training more seriously.
Even in 2006 or leading up to the 2006 Olympics, that qualifying path was anything but straightforward. What can you tell us about the qualifying experience, being essentially on the wait list, so to speak, like being an alternate and then getting that call?
Yeah, so the year before the 2006 Olympics, 2005, I think it was the first time I had qualified at the senior national level, and I got 5th place. I had a great skate, and then I competed at the World Junior Championships and got a bronze medal. But going into the 2006 season, I didn't have a lot of international experience at the senior level, and so I kind of went in thinking, like, obviously it'd be amazing to make an Olympic team, but I just wanted to skate well for myself. I wanted to try to make the podium at nationals, and I accomplished that. I got 3rd place. I was named to the world team, and as you mentioned, I was an alternate to the Olympic team. And I took that, took the lens of, I qualified for the world team, which I had never done before, and that was huge for me. So I was still training, because in an Olympic year, nationals are usually in January, and then the Olympics are February, and then the World Championships are in March. And so I was still training for the World Championships, and it was kind of a little bit of a wild ride, because the Olympics had started, I was not on the team, and I got a phone call a couple days after the opening ceremony saying, how would you like to represent the United States at the Olympics? And of course the answer is yes, I would love to represent the US at the Olympics. And so a couple days later, I was on a plane to Italy. And a couple days after that, I was competing in the Olympics, which, I mean, it was, a dream come true.
Especially after its depictions in shows like The White Lotus, I think a lot of Americans dream of visiting Italy. What's your memory of going to Torino and being in Italy as part of this Olympic journey?
Italy was a great experience. I think I definitely had the lens of being there as an Olympian, and so being at the village and the arena and the other events, going to see some of the other sports, and so being at an Olympics is very special. And I think that Italy did a fantastic job, and it's exciting that their Olympics are coming back to Italy. And I mean, wild to say, 20 years later, but the Olympics is just a special time.
when people look back at your Olympic record, they'll see that that year you finished seventh, which doesn't earn you a spot on the podium. But you overcame some adversity and achieved some personal bests at the biggest stage possible. So what do you recall from the actual experience of competition that year?
I recall first just how special it is to skate on Olympic ice. It's this ultimate goal. Like I had mentioned, it was always a dream. And so just the first time to skate over, the Olympic rings in an Olympic arena is just unreal. And then you kind of have to come back and say, okay, now I have to go finish this practice session and do what I came here to do, which was compete. And so I just remember having a fantastic time. I went out there and did two solid programs, and I remember the crowd being so supportive and so loud. And kind of funny though that what I remember is that the arena itself, so the capacity of the arena felt a bit smaller than at the national championships. So in some way it felt a little bit more intimate of this huge stage, but the actual experience was a little bit different. But I mean, looking back, it's all positive things, all like very special things.
I was able to find the clip of your short program from 2006 from NBC on YouTube, and I was watching it, and I'm sort of watching you go through this whole process and just being incredibly athletic, like all figure skaters are. And then you have that moment you were talking about, the kiss and cry, and you had two women next to you, maybe your mom and your coach. And I'm just wondering if, it's been 20 years, but if you have any memories of your moment sitting there waiting for that score.
Yeah, it was my coach and another person part of the Team USA team. And I just remember trying to soak it all in. I had just done my short program, competed the first part of the competition, and just trying to soak in that I had just done an Olympic program. And just, looking out at the crowd, it was, I know I've used this word before, but it was a bit surreal.
And at that point, you are 17 or 18, I believe.
Yep. 17.
How can you contextualize, for people who have never been an Olympian, the type of pressure, but also the joy and the highs? Now that you're older than that and can look back, what were the intensity, the emotions you experienced that day?
I think it was everything. So you train and train and train for that moment. It's 2 minutes and 50 seconds for a short program. It's about 4 minutes for a long program. So you are training for those 7 minutes-ish, less than 7 minutes of a performance. And as a 17-year-old, I was a junior in high school. I went to public school. And so there was always a balance of skating, and then I was always in school or doing something outside of skating too. But going into the Olympics, it's all the emotions. It's the nervousness because you're on the biggest stage of your life. But there's also this sense of confidence because you have trained and qualified and gotten to that point. And then of course there's the natural butterflies in your stomach of going into your starting position. But for me, I just remember the music starts and your body just takes over.
Wow. Transcendental. It sounds like, and again, something that is just in some ways hard for me to experience, even though we have once shared the ice at the Bright Hockey Center while I was, I think, pushing pucks around in the corner while you were being an excellent skater as always. People might think, again, if they hadn't followed your career, that the 2006 Olympics was sort of the end for you, but actually you continued to skate and you tried to qualify for the 2010 Olympics. I think one of the things I had read was that you didn't get to attend the Olympic ceremonies because of the way or the opening ceremonies, I should say, because of the way that you qualified in 2006. That was one of your motivations. What was it like being a college student and trying to manage an academic workload of an elite college and also trying to maintain the elite preparation you need for being a internationally competitive figure skater?
Yeah, it was, it's hard. I had mentioned before, I was in public school, in high school when I qualified for the Olympics in 2006. And so was always had that balance of skating and going to school. And then after starting college, it was, a balance that was really hard. It was hard to manage, but for me, education is so important. My dad would always say, like, you're a student athlete, not an athlete student. And so education was very important. And so went through freshman year and sophomore year really trying to balance both. Unfortunately, ended up with some injuries, had to miss some competitions. And it was junior year that I decided that I would take one semester off, or a potential year, depending on how the season went. But I remember thinking back, that was a really big decision for me to make of, I'm putting my education on hold so I can focus on training and skating, which I'd never really done before. And I'm really glad I made that decision, because I was able to really focus on skating. I didn't qualify again for the Olympics, but I was able to really leave everything on the ice. I knew that was my last season. I knew that was going to be kind of like the end of my competitive career, and I was able to really give it my all. And I didn't make the team, but was able to then go back to college, and that was also a time when I started to get more involved with different things in college and try out, join different clubs and try different things outside of the rink.
One of the things you worked on in college was an evening with champions, which you could talk about, but also in general, since retiring from figure skating, you've gone on to remain involved with sports organizations despite working in tech, a different industry. I know that for some athletes, once they retire, especially if they were an elite athlete when they were younger, they're done. They don't want anything to do with that sport, but you're still involved with the Olympic movement and with figure skating. What leads you to want to stay connected and to stay actively involved with the sport?
Yeah, I mean, skating and sports were such a big part of my childhood, a big part of me growing up, and really shaped a lot of my learnings, brought me around the world, created this community of friendship that is pretty unique. And now that I'm many years out of competition, I still really I found that community is really special, and so for me, I really want to be part of that community and give back to that community, and so have been involved with some things through skating and through other ways to be involved in the Olympic movement, and especially now having children and really seeing the next generation. I want to give back to that community, to grow it and foster it so that the next generation of athletes has that too.
Speaking of the next generation of athletes, we're less than 6 months away from the next Italian Winter Games. Like you were saying, it marks 20 years since you were in competition in Italy at the Winter Games in Torino. Now we're going to be in Milan and Cortina. What are some things that you're looking forward to seeing as a spectator of the Olympics, but also maybe reliving given some of the milestones that you yourself will be observing, celebrating?
I obviously love the competitions, but it's also the stories. Like, I live for the stories. I live for every athlete has their story, and there are so many in the skating. There's so many skaters right now who have just fantastic stories and are doing really well in competition. And so, very excited about the skating events. But all of the Olympics, like. I'm glued to the television when the Olympics are on.
I think you and me both. It's pretty hard to turn away, and I sort of love now that you can sort of have like Gold Zone and watch 4 sports at once, something that wasn't possible back in the day. Very, very much appealing for sports fans. To talk about the next generation again, and maybe even more concretely for you, you're now a mom of 2 kids. How do you think about the experience you want them to have as far as sports goes, whether that's competitively or as fans? And have you bought them their first pair of skates yet?
They're young, but the older one does have some skates. But I think for me, like I had mentioned before, skating was such a big part of growing up. And it wasn't just that it was skating, it was really sports in general. And I would love for them to find something that they're excited about, whether that's in sports or in something else. And for me, sports taught me so much. And it's not because I'm an Olympian that it did, it's because I was involved with sports. And so for my kids, I want them to be exposed to many different sports and find something they love and, learn like I did through sports.
I've definitely learned a lot talking to you today. Thanks for sharing all your insights and your perspective on your career and everything that's come since. I appreciate you being on.
Thank you. It was great to chat.